And I would say there was a time where he was far more important to me than my own father. And I was in a couple of relationships, romantic kind, and when I realized that the women are becoming jealous of my relationship with Hussein, my companions would give me an ultimatum. You know, it's either me or him. I said, well, it's going to be him. You know, so I would leave. And he was the guy through which I became interested in these ideas. You know, and luckily for me, of course, I had no money issues because I wouldn't go anywhere. The only money I needed was for books. And so he became the foundation for, you know, my identity, my life, meaning, purpose, and all that. And when I remember telling him I was going to do philosophy, everybody in the room laughed. Because if you're an immigrant from a third world country, you don't go into the social sciences, you don't do piano. You major in electronics, you major in computer science, you become a doctor, you become a lawyer to make money for yourself and your family. You know. And so the short answer to your question is, he was my non-academic teacher. And after about 10 or so years, I realized that I think I just need to walk alone. You know, sometimes I would listen to him and he wouldn't make any sense and he would no longer inspire me. But he had given me this blender inside where I would read books and I would blend the ideas according to the foundation he had created. And even today, most of my mannerisms, you know, are the outcome of my interaction with him. But the funny thing is this. I only recognize the value of Hussein in my life after about 27 years. You know, it's kind of like you value what your father has done for you only when you have a child, when you realize that your kids take all of your energy, all of your time, all of your money, all of your desires, they leave nothing and they trash the house on a daily basis. Good morning, Abi. You know, and then you sit back and you say, oh, my father did all of this for me as I'm doing for my kids. It's awful to have kids. You know, I'm so embarrassed for having talked to my father in this particular way or having done that particular thing. So it takes really a long time to understand anything that's worth understanding. Yeah.
Do you ever get to share with the same? Like how
you can't share what you don't really understand well. I mean, sure, there is. Our culture is you express gratitude all the time. You know, I have contact with his wife. You know, we text all the time, and his name always comes up. You know, either by me or by her. So the gratitude has been there all the time, but it hasn't been with a rich understanding. It's only been really very recent, 5 years, maybe 6 years. You know, and I think it's mostly not even that long. It was after his passing some 3 years ago that you kind of get a little older. You have more time to sit and reflect. You can think better about things now. You're much more clear in your head. And then you begin to kind of connect the dots. I am here because of what happened some 40 years ago. You know. But with incomplete understanding, it's very, very difficult to appreciate things. Yeah.
I guess, like, what if you're someone where, like, that is the complete opposite? Like, I feel like there are people that don't necessarily, like I agree that, like, you need experience and, like, you need to, like, live life in order to, like, gain an understanding of things. And I feel like in society today, like, you talk a lot about, like, detachment, how people kind of, like, detach from, like, pain and, like, detach from all of these things just to kind of, like, avoid feeling. But I feel like there has to be a group of people, because I feel like I can't be the only person who feels like they feel things so deeply and think and analyze things so deeply that they're just like I don't want to say constant pain, but like pain is just something that they're very like accepting of and like aware of. So like what about those people where like everything that you're saying is like the complete opposite? Like what if like at a very young age or from a very young age, like you have that foundation of like pain, trauma, like understanding things a certain way, feeling things deeply. So you start with that. So then what does that look like for, I guess, those kinds of people that like don't need to be like, I don't know, in their 80s or 90s or old enough to understand certain things?
You know, there are some people who have this temperament where they create their own trauma. One Persian guy, his name is Shahriyar. زندگانی مو زمین زندان ما زندگانی درد بی درمان ماست. That we are these living animals and life is our prison. And it's a prison in which there is a good amount of pain, but there is no remedy. راندگانیم از بهشت جاودان. We were expelled from this eternal paradise. این زمین زندان جاویدان ماست. That the life down here is our eternal prison. There are some people, therefore, who create their own traumas because of the way they've been kind of wired, put together. Then there are those in whom trauma is created. If you happen to be one of those persons, the empaths, those who feel so much, and it's kind of like the story of Jesus. He feels a lot, maybe he even understands a lot, but he needs to go on this 18-year quest to figure out what exactly it is that he's feeling and what exactly it is that he's understanding. That journey is very, very important to kind of understand what you feel and how you think about things. Without that journey, what happens is you're just constipated with emotions and thoughts. And there's a good chance that your expression of those thoughts and emotions are always going to be flawed and very, very subjective. If you can make your emotions and thoughts universalized, in other words, life is suffering, not just for you, not just for me, for everyone. Now that is how you universalize pain. If you can do that, good for you. If on the other hand, it becomes and remains very subjective, then I think for the most part, you may be in trouble. Unless you have this venting mechanism where you create, you write poetry, you have friends with whom you talk. But I think because pain by its very nature makes all of us very, very alone. You have to find not a human being, but an instrument, an inanimate object that you can bring to life. And I'm a sort of a black and white sort of a fellow. I'm sure there are a lot of gray areas in it. But I think initially, if you want to understand and learn something really, really well, you have to be black and white. There is no gray. Gray is really for proficient people, exceptional people. But
I guess how does one learn how to look at things in like a black and white sort of like mentality? There are a bunch of gray areas, and sometimes I feel like I find myself stuck in those gray areas with certain things. So how does one do that?
Well, I think you should do hard drugs for a while, enjoy them. You should
Nice.
you should have sex with anything and anyone that walks. And then there comes a point where you get tired, hopefully, of doing drugs and just having casual sex. And you say, okay, I want to get married. And then get married. Let's just say, okay? And you have found yourself a relatively nice companion, you get married. And then lo and behold, after a month or two or three or four, a couple of years perhaps, you realize you won't have a child, and you become pregnant and you have a healthy child. And you realize that you live in a drug-infested neighborhood. Now, you've done drugs. You know that it brings about a good amount of pleasure. You also know that it brings about a good amount of pain. And this is your child. It came from you, out of you. And all of a sudden you realize there is no gray area. Unless you just happen to be a kind of casual mom who doesn't care for your child's future. You become very, very black and white. No drugs, no TV. And if your husband comes home, you don't smell like weed. You become very, very black and white. And you can't do that when you're young. Because when you're young, you like democracy. Anything that's out there is good. Without really truly examining things. Once you become very good at anything, it doesn't matter what it is. When you become good at anything in life, you become black and white. And then once you create a relationship with your students, then you create gray areas. And by gray areas, you become very forgiving. You know that as a student, they're bound to make a lot of mistakes. If I had a student who was 18, raised their hand and said, let me tell you what philosophy is, I'd probably just go to my office and drop him from the class.
That's hard getting there. You gotta go through so much to get there. I don't know, I feel like there's probably people that never do get there.
I would like to be optimistic and say yes.
No, I know you're like a nihilist, low key. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. If you like yourself, you'll become black and white. I mean, you just enter this period of, you go into a convent of sort, psychologically speaking. First, because you hate the way you've been feeling for the past 20 years. You want to adopt some new emotions, but you don't know how. You also know that the people you hang out with are just poisonous, toxic. And so you kind of just, find yourself in a nice little corner. You sit, you read, you write. I don't know what the hell people do these days. It's a trashy culture. So finding anything that's valuable is going to be very, very difficult. You don't have the poetry, you don't have the cultural narratives. None of those things exist. So you really have to create your own, but again, if you're passionate enough, you can do it. But passion. So, anyone else with anything that they could make interesting? Eric? Eric.
I'm curious about how you learn to observe better, translate information into other things better. For instance, take Sun Tzu, which is essentially information distilled down to its most distilled, which can make it hard to apply it to other things easier.
Can you give me a different example?
Say I master chess, but want to apply chess reasoning to business.
Well, if you happen to be Magnus Carlsen, chess becomes your business. So you don't have to look for another business to make money. If, on the other hand, you're a Magnus Carlsen, but you also like to sell cars, since you've been playing chess from the age of 5 onwards, there's a good chance that the way you think about things are always going to be dominated by the movements you make on the chessboard. Remember, when you're good at anything, you kind of create this highway in your brain. There are certain habits, there are certain things that you do. When you look at Magnus Carlsen, for example, since you brought up chess, he is a really, really good soccer player. He's also a really, really good poker player. He's really good at most of the things that he focuses on. I mean, he may be autistic, I don't really know. But when you're good at one thing, there's a good chance that you can be good at a host of things. There is something that Gurdjieff had said some years ago, that the reason why people are not good at anything is because they're just not good at anything. If you know how to make coffee well, then when it comes to talking about philosophy, you'll keep your mouth shut. Because you know that making coffee, taking the beans, roasting them, grounding them, making them, that takes some years to kind of get the knowledge of. And so if you're 18 and have been playing with coffee for the past 10 years, I mean, philosophy is no different than coffee. Where do you get the beans from? How do you roast it? What temperature? But because people are not good at anything, they talk about everything. Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that just resonates with me. It's not really a question. I just like the idea of whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, just find something that you enjoy and then do it. And even though you're not good at it in the beginning, if you like it and it feels good, like in your body feels good, like and you don't care that you suck at it, keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I think at some point you are good at it and you have created new neural pathways that have taught you, it's kind of like the idea of struggling with life, and instead of saying I'm just going to lay in bed today and I'm not going to get up, I'm going to take my pain to the tennis court, to the piano. I'm going to take it and I'm going to make art out of my...
I think like all of us, there are moments where piano can become a very useful tool, but there are days where even piano fails you, and I think if you can come to a place where you can accept that piano can be helpful to your depression or to your sorrow, once a week and 6 days out of the week you'll be in bed. If you can make peace with that without suffering from chronic depression, that piano is just useless for the rest of your life, then I think it's great. I think this day and age, if you can find anything that brings you a modicum amount of peace, it's good. I didn't know what tennis was. One morning I wake up, I turn on the TV, and it's 1980 Wimbledon finals between John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg. And when I turned on the TV, it was tiebreaker fourth set, where McEnroe wins it. I think it was 1917 or 1816. There was something about Bjorn Borg. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was his long hair, maybe it was his headband, maybe it was the way he would move on the court. Maybe it was the fact that he was just so expressionless, He would not show any emotions. That's why they called him the Iceman on the court. But I remember after that, I just went and stole a racket. Immigrants don't have money to play such expensive sports. And you're not even a novice. You just suck at this game. But there was something about Bjorn Borg that had found space inside me. And so I started playing. And I started when I was 13 or 14. By the time I was 16, I was really, really good, and I wanted to be a pro. So I didn't go to any of my classes at high school. And every time I had a bad game, I had the picture of Bjorn Borg in the jacket of my tennis racket. I would go to the jacket, look at his picture to inspire myself, and go back and hopefully play a bit better. It was a good messiah for me until the age of 18 or 19. And that's when it stopped. Tennis was no longer interesting. And one of the things about passion is that, there are certain passions that can carry you throughout your life. And there are certain passions or desires or excitements that you have that'll carry you for about 5 or 6 years. The problem with 5 or 6 year passion, even though they're great salvation to life, is that you spend so much time, especially if it happens to be like, say, you like bicycling. It is such an expensive sport that you say, I want to be like Lance Armstrong before he was caught. Okay? That you spend thousands of dollars, especially if you happen to be an immigrant. And then one morning you wake up like all the other mornings, you want to go out for a ride and then you realize you just don't feel like it. It's no longer as exciting. And there comes a point where you sit back and you say, man, I got $5, 5 bicycles. They're each like $25,000 each. I've spent all this money, all this energy. It's just gathering dust. Now you face regret. What do I do now? And the problem with inspiration is once you've been touched, it's really very difficult to just walk around aimlessly because you're looking for things to inspire you. And there isn't much out there to inspire you. Now you find yourself in the cradle of depression or sadness. And you will gravitate towards anything. Maybe you'll smoke. Maybe you'll have casual sex. Because all these pleasures, what they have in common is that pleasure inspires you for that 1 or 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes, or maybe weeks. Then it will abandon you. If, on the other hand, you have a sort of pleasure that, and no one can know this, no one can see this really. I mean, it's kind of like, I never thought that retirement feels or sounds or looks good. But the truth is, it feels really good. I can't tell you how many times I was tempted to text Chris and say, Chris, 1 more week, do you mind? But if you can find a hobby out there that's interesting, good. Jesus.
I guess I was thinking though that it's more than just a hobby. I mean, hobbies are great, but it's something that makes you go inward. It's something that feels, something that makes you turn inward. And it's something that makes you, when you're experiencing it, it helps you then off of that thing. Whatever, you were good on the court, maybe you learned to be good in life in some way because of that time on the court. That's what I like about when you find, I think people should find things that help them do that early on. It's not just an inspiration. It's not just a passion.
There is, may I? I don't mean to interrupt. با درد بساز چون دوای تو منم با من بنشین something که آشنای تو منم گر کشته شدی مگو که من کشته شدم شکرانه بده که خونبهای تو منم. I think you have to get to a very mature stage in life where you can use pain to your advantage. Initially, you don't have the sufficient tools. You're absolutely right. But I think it's for a relatively late stage in your intimacy or companionship with pain. If I'm going through a divorce, I can't tell you that, I am gaining so much insight and wisdom from what I'm going through. The truth is, my hopes have been shattered. I have no idea how my kids are going to go through, what they're going to do. I'm going through hell, really. Then a good amount of time must pass. My soul will be purged with fire, not water. That's my baptism. And there comes a point where hopefully in this life, while alive, I will make peace with all the ways I have fallen and all the ways I've been betrayed and all the ways I have betrayed. And once I've made peace, then I can say, okay, Now I'm gaining some insight. How they come about, I don't know. I just know that my understanding is becoming a bit more richer. And my expression of the understanding is becoming much more articulate and much more eloquent. So you are right. But for pain to become an intimate companion, you have to be okay with the ups and downs. If I'm your husband and you know that I have cancer, well, you have to eventually find peace with me rotting in your bedroom, with you slaving away, not having any friends, not having anyone over. You have to kind of understand life a bit. You have to understand death a bit. You have to understand loneliness a bit. You have to understand how I am betraying you as I'm abandoning you and the 5 kids. Once you've made peace with all of that, then you can write a book about the loss of my husband. Now that can be a good book to read. But until then, I don't think there is any wisdom to be gained, except just going through a good amount of pain. Jeez. Yeah, please.
I don't know if it's like like, then why we always try to find ways to like not feel the pain? If like pain is actually necessary, why our culture always tries to find ways to not feel pain? Like we try to like actually when we're going through it. It's never like, or at least for me, and I guess it's never like, oh my god, yes, like this is going to help me. It's always like, oh, I don't want to feel this. Like and everybody's telling me, oh, you shouldn't feel this way. Like,
Imagine for a moment that you and I are in a relationship, and it's a bad relationship. Well, how often do you want to sit me down and talk about how bad our relationship is? We bought a house together, we have a couple of kids together, you know. How often do you think you and I are going to sit and talk about divorce? What's going to happen to our kids? I think most often what we'll do is we'll find a way to find restaurants, to go and have dinner, to go on cruises. Because when you're talking about issues, they're very complex, and finding the remedy is very also complex. And there comes a point where you realize, okay, I'm a drunk. Becoming sober, I want to, it's just very difficult. And I'm going to fail repeatedly. And you have to find yourself being patient every single day, you know. So, and we're not, again, the sort of animals that enjoy pain, the presence of pain. You know, we just like to resolve things quickly. Add to it the fact that you and I live in a culture that is all about quick fixes. You know, so you have a lot of things on your hand to kind of sift through. You know, when my father came to visit us some years ago, this is like 1983, I remember I was on a date just before going to the gas station to work my graveyard shift. Her name was Bianca. And I called my father, he had just come from Iran, and I said, Dad, I'll be there. And he says to me, Amir, you know, it's 10 o'clock. I'm alone. No one's here. And I hung up the phone. I said, yeah, I'll be there soon. I hung up the phone. I said, why can't this guy just figure out what to do with being alone? And the truth is, he wasn't born in a culture where he was forced to be alone and live alone. He had an open door policy. The culture is very social. Everybody knocks on your door. There is never a moment where you're left alone. You know, if you live in that particular culture and all of a sudden you find yourself very, very alone, well, you have to find the sort of narratives that lives in America. When you're alone, what do? You don't have that problem in Iran. That question never comes up unless your spouse dies, your kids die. There is a war, and the only person survived is you, you know. So what you have in this culture is, first, you have the human being who is, for the most part, very, 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 very alone. You only have friends in good time. In bad times, you have friends because you vent. But there comes a point where you just grow tired of your own voice and just go within. And when someone says, what's going on with you? What's wrong with you? You've been asked this question 1,000 times. You're never going to say, you're going to say, I'm okay. Like a clown. On the outside, you have a smiley face. On the inside, you have tears. Okay? Then you have cheap relationships coming your way in this culture. Then you have the wrong narratives coming to you in this culture. Add to it, because of technology, you don't really have time. You don't have very much time to sit and sift through issues. You lack the patience that your parents have. We don't have that. That's something that you need to cultivate. It was given to us, all of us, by culture itself. The culture steals it through technology, urbanism, all that stuff. Now, if you want to cultivate patience, you have to go on retreats. But they're expensive.
That's what I'm saying. It's almost like
Yeah.
we're not allowed to feel pain. Like, if you want, it's almost like you don't have to take time for yourself, because if you do, you become, I don't know, more aware, and that's wrong. Because that's wrong to become more aware.
If you can become aware with a group of people, it's like if I'm a drunk and I want to be sober, and this front row, all the people are also drunk but want to become a sober, these are good friends to have because we all have the same desire. Our wives are mad at us, our kids don't like us, we have lost our jobs, all of us want to become sober. This is a good friendship to have. If on the other hand, I'm the only one who wants to be sober, but these people want to get drunk, then the truth is it's not going to be a good fit. If you desire to be aware, find a group of people who have the same desire. Then all of you can share the awareness and the pain that comes with the awareness and the expression that comes with the awareness. If on the other hand you're the only one, it's too big of a cross for you to carry on your own in this culture, especially if you happen to be an immigrant. And it's not good to be aware. Yeah, it's not. Well, it's good to see all of you. Hopefully I'll see you on Thursday. Yes?
I don't know about to start, but I don't think the weekly question.
Yeah, I know. I forgot to publish it. But it's there now. You want to put something there. If you don't, do what you can.
Yeah, so I submitted it like right after you published it, but it still says like late.
So yeah, you're gonna lose some points because it was my mistake. But don't worry about that. What grade do you want?
I need an A in this class.
A.
Yes.
You've been absent for 2 months.
I have not.
Well, I haven't seen you.
I wonder why.
I'm sure you'll all do well. By the way, I'm teaching a world religions class in this classroom this summer, 6 p.m. to 8:50 or 8:45. It's really, really a good class. For those of you who have a lot of questions, and most of you do,
How many days a week?
it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But, it's a fun class. So if you're interested, sign up. If you're not interested, sign up nevertheless and then drop the class so the class doesn't get canceled. But it's really a good class. I've taught that class here at Laney for the past 25 years. 20 years. So.
You enjoy teaching that more than philosophy?
There is something very special about night. Not just classes, just in general. شب خیز که عاشقان به شب راز کنند. Anyway, so. Yeah. Anyways, have a good day. It's good to see you all. Yeah, yes, please.
It's just, do you speak, sometimes you speak your first language, I apologize. I'm not sure.
Persian?
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you say stuff in your first language because it's easier to express yourself? Because sometimes I feel like I want to speak Italian because I can't find the words in English, and it's so frustrating because it's not my first language. So I was just wondering if you do ever like allow yourself to like actually explain.
Well, because I used to sing, I have memorized a lot of poems, and I like poetry, Persian poetry especially, because they are very reflective and philosophical. I think if you have read a good amount of Walt Whitman, T.S. Eliot, Shakespeare, and if you can find, lines written by those people who fit what you're talking about, then it's going to be very natural, organic for you. I don't like English poetry. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't even like Sanskrit or Indian poetry. That doesn't do much for me. Persian, on the other hand, man, it's like, the second Matrix. French, the language, is like wiping your ass with silk. That's Persian poetry. It talks about the most awful things of life, but in such a beautiful way. It's like silk. Have a nice day. It's good to see all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.